We've got some
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. Last guest of 2020. And today's guest is not only in the Cool Kids Club. Some might even say that he is a legendary content creator, and we agree. We came across today's guest while in the YouTube rabbit hole. The recommended video was how to get 10,000 Instagram followers per week. We immediately thought clickbait. Definitely clickbait. But we still clicked on it and watched the entire 49 minutes and 4 seconds of that video.
Yes, to this day, we don't know what type of sorcery that was, but his way of teaching and sharing his knowledge got thousands, if not millions of people's attention. Today's legendary guest loves helping others make a living doing what they love, and he does it by teaching. He is the master of making complex ideas simple to understand. And just in case you cannot tell right now, I am fangirling pretty hard right now.
Let's add some more heat to that hype. Today's guest is a winner of the Emmy Individual Achievement in Art Direction. He is an international keynote speaker, and he has launched 2 7-figure businesses. He is a podcast host of The Future Without an E and the author of Pocket Full of Dough. And in case you are not pumped up yet, his mission is to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love.
Wow. What? Oh, we could talk about him all day, but you know what would be better? If we bring him on here. Please welcome founder of The Future, legendary entrepreneur, and Content is Profit Future Hall of Famer, Mr. Chris.
Woo, woo, woo. You guys have so much energy. I'm like, oh, when does this begin? I don't know. It's about to explode. Love it.
Welcome, Chris. We are extremely excited to have you here in Content is Profit, man. Thank you for being that last guest of 2020. It's incredible.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, I was thinking this morning, what a way to say goodbye to the Content is Profit year with Chris going here. So thank you.
So before we started the interview, you know, Chris is like, who's who? And you know, we know, for those watching, we're, you know, matching right now purple t-shirt. So that was definitely on purpose to confuse him. You know, clearly Luis, I'm Fonzie. So Fonzie is the sexy voice with the beard over here. And we're good to go. So, dude, Chris, why don't you share a little bit of your story? Like, how do you get to this point where you're like, your mission is teach 1 billion people? You know, you just reached 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Congrats. I know that might be a vanity number, but it does mean a lot. There's a lot of people that sync with your message, with what you teach, and you're helping thousands of people, you know, reach out those amazing goals. So how do you get there? Like, where's that start?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we are hardwired as human beings to want to help other people. And we do this in small ways, and some of us are able to do it in ways that scale. I've loved teaching, and I was teaching at Art Center for 15 years, but the problem was it was always with a small group of very specific people who for a circumstance are privileged because they can afford to go to a private art school that their parents and whoever support them allow them to pursue this creative endeavor. What about the rest of us? What about the people who aren't in the United States, who aren't in California, who can't afford this private school or art education? What do we do about them? And we need to change that. And a friend of mine, Jose Caballero, in 2014 invited me to start teaching on YouTube, something I had not thought about. And he pulled me in reluctantly. I started to do this, and I was like, this is really cool. And you start to see the messages and the comments start to stream in a little bit at the beginning, just 1 message every other day, 2 messages, something like that. But now that we've been doing this for 6 years, we've reached, I think, almost a tipping point in which enough people who are interested in design start to know about the future and what it is we're trying to do. So that's the 1 billion mission that we're on.
Yeah, that is amazing. Chris, you know something that resonated with me so much? And we met you at PodMax, right? Well, officially met you at PodMax. You were the keynote speaker there, and we know Josh is listening. So thank you, Josh, for bringing him on. And you mentioned that you started your publishing journey at the young age of 42, right? And I was like, wow. First of all, he looks like 25. So
Just saying.
I was very confused. But then I was like, that is incredible because so many people think they are already late to the game, right? I personally thought that I am 28 right now. When we started Biz Bros was about 5 years ago. And I left 4 years. And this year, when we started publishing again, I was like, I'm late. I thought I was late. And when I heard your story, that was so empowering. What made you, right? Like, I know your friend dragged you over, but what made you finally click and say, you know what, I'm going to continue to do this for 6 years instead of doing it once and saying, you know what, I'm late to the game?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I do want to say something. I'm going to try to do my best Marlon Brando voice here. He made me an offer I can't refuse. So he said, you can come in and you just sit here like a dummy. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything, and I'll take care of the rest. Now, he had experience doing many live streams and shows. He's an extroverted person. He likes to talk. He's very quick with his thinking. And so I felt very safe to sit there. And in the first couple of shows, I don't say anything. Where it connects, where it resonates, and where it becomes its own thing is I start to discover I have this voice. I hate my own voice for a long time. But when I mean like I discover my own voice and that I have something to say, I have a unique set of experiences, Liam Neeson's, a unique set of skills.
Yeah.
And I can help people. And I have the experience in teaching and running a business. And it's time for me to get out of my own way, my own issues with self-awareness, self-confidence, self-esteem. I had to push those aside and say, you know what? I'm here to try to help people. And if this is helping people, then I'll continue to do this. And so far, I'm continually encouraged by the people who tune in to say, this is transformative. This has gotten me out of a dark place. I wanted to quit design. My boss was abusive. I was working in a toxic work environment. I didn't know what the next steps were. And you opened the door for me. And I got to tell you, that human nature of like trying to help people, when you hear things like that, how could you stop?
Yeah, it does get addicting. And personally, like Fonzie mentioned, like we've started the company about 5 years ago. We started as a sticker company and then t-shirt company, and then we transitioned to social media management because we were trying to figure out how to sell these things. And we never really started publishing the show, for example, till March when COVID hit. Right? We were told by our coaches, we were told by the people that we invested with, like, you guys have to publish every single day. Like, what are you guys doing? And we're actually selling a service that allow our clients to do that, but we're not doing it ourselves. And it took like this crazy experience that was very painful personally, because we lost about 80% of our business to kickstart this publishing, right? And do you think is necessary to kind of like a pain like that? You just described that you were in a dark place. For us, that was very dark because we literally thought the business was going to be gone in 60 days. So we're like, this is the time to go dive in. And everything has been incredible ever since. Lots of learning, lots of connection, lots of people that we've been able to meet, just like you coming into the show. And now we have a team of 8 that is executing every single day for our clients. And it's incredible. We're getting to work with people that we love. Now, is it necessary for people to actually touch that dark place to be able to react and start creating, start teaching, and start creating that impact for other people?
Yeah, I can't say in a broad blanket statement that everybody has to go to a dark place before they can see the light. But sometimes in that challenge, in the obstacle, in the darkness, you find out who you are, what your resolve is, and what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to do. And I think that is a test of character. And so each and every single person who goes through this, and they say to themselves, despite the obstacles, despite the challenges and the disadvantages I have in my life, and people who are casting stones at me, despite all that stuff, I'm so determined, I'm going to go forward, I'm going to do this thing, that they wind up being successful just because of that sheer will and determination to succeed. It's like Terminator vision, right? It's like, I want John Connor, Sarah Connor. That's it. I'm going to go in and I'm not going to stop until you melt me down. Sorry, spoiler alert.
I gotta add here, I love the movie references, first of all. And I do have a selfish question that I want to wait for the end of the show to ask. But I'm curious because you had that person that was support for you, that he said, sit here, don't say anything, right? And a lot of people, they might not have someone like that offer a seat right next to them and be of, hey, learn with me and just be on camera. How can they get started? How can they say, I mean, we last episode we have someone say just do, right, which we think it's
Right.
amazing advice. But I'm curious because a lot of people have those limiting beliefs, right, that they
Yeah.
hold them, and it's very difficult to just do sometimes. So what would you tell these people?
Okay. Misery loves company. So if you're going to be miserable, invite somebody else to be miserable with you and just do it together. And you both can suck. You don't have to have a mentor that's professional and that's good. It's like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I feel safer. Think about this. If you go to a party and you know no one, that's why you have a wing person, a wingman, a wing woman who comes with you. So it's like no matter what, you'll be lost together,
Yeah.
and it's a lot less daunting. It's a lot less intimidating. Same thing as if you're lost in the wilderness, it sucks to be out there by yourself. So just having one other person. Now, here's another one. Tom Hanks in the movie, I think it's the one where Castaway.
Yeah.
He's by himself and he's gonna lose his mind. So he makes an imaginary friend called Wilson. He's like, Wilson,
Wow.
and so he talks it, and that Wilson ball is the thing that keeps him sane. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing I'm going to recommend that people do is if you really want to be an engaging, dynamic, charismatic person on camera, study people who are engaging, dynamic, and great on camera. Who are these people? I like to look at stand-up comedians, how they own the stage. They're kind of naked on stage, not literally, but it's just them telling stories.
I think it's Bert that he has a Netflix show and he's like shirtless. I mean, except him, just saying.
Yeah. some people do that. I saw that one. So you study comedians, stand-up comics, and see what they do, and you adopt different mannerisms. Like my wife, she was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm trying to retell their sets, their jokes and their bits in the way that they say it, how they walk on stage, right? If I can do that, then some of that is then that person becoming my unofficial teacher.
Wow.
That's how I learn.
That's impressive. So you do go around the house kind of like impersonating these comedians, and are you repeating their jokes or are you adding your own things what you're trying to teach to other people while doing this?
That's a great question. The first rule in learning something is just to copy. And people skip over that process. And this happens all the time. Like my two children, I have two boys. One of them aspires to be a designer and as an artist. And I'll say, okay, here's how you do this thing. Here's how you do this drawing. He's like, no, I got it, Dad. So he wants to skip over the foundation of the hard work, the repetition, the practice, and the exercise. So my recommendation for you is first, just try to copy, try to imitate, try to get close to that. So the cadence, the story, the inflection, holding like that pregnant pause before you kind of have the release. Just do that like they do it first. And by doing that over and over again, you can't help but then to filter some of that through your own way of doing things. And it starts to become your own unique style. I'm not telling those jokes on camera. I'm just doing that for practice so that I can see what it feels like to be able to land and deliver a story or a joke. That's the idea.
Chris, you're gonna see us tonight in front of the TV, just walking around saying the jokes that we find on Netflix.
Yeah, Chris, just so you know, like quick parenthesis here, like in the last like legit 20 episodes, people have been saying that I'm kind of funny, and my wife doesn't believe me. So now you're just giving me permission to go and be funny in the house. So I might be scared that she's actually gonna kick me out of the house. So I hope you have room in there in the future studios, and so I can come hang out. No, but all jokes aside, I love that lesson, and it's something that a lot of people skip, not only on publishing but also like in their businesses, right? Like they just want to get to that instant gratification very quickly, and that happened to us in the first like couple of years. We're like total bro marketer, right? We want the Lambo, right? And it was the need, it was the greed, and it was that was the seed that got us started. And then as we started our journey, that continually, like that completely evolved and changed. And now the mission is completely different. It could not be further from that, right? So thank you for that lesson, because if we have to put in place those things that are working and then start morphing it into what works for us, right? That's why we do the show together.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something to what you said that I think is so important. I don't want people to miss it out, right? You said first start copying. And there's this book that we read. It's called A Technique for Producing Ideas. It's a book of like 20 pages. It's absolutely amazing. It was written by a copywriter. His last name is Webb. I don't remember the first name. But he goes and he said, it is key that you obviously are very knowledgeable in your field, and then you start learning on the general field of things. And then you're going to start tying those ideas, and that's how you create new ideas. And I think it's the same exact thing with the process that you're saying, right? Because you are very knowledgeable on what you want to say and how you want to deliver it in a way. But now by practicing and copying what these comedians are doing, you have a way to tie those two together and deliver something totally new that is unique to yourself.
100%. And I want to echo what you just said. If you think about your human body, like I have fingers, I have hands, I have toes, but I have one spine. And the spine is what is able to keep the structure, this bag of flesh and water together. And that spine is like your area of focus, your expertise, your practice, your discipline, your vocation, your profession, whatever it is. Have that one really strong structure so that you can hang the rest of who you are on. So for me, and for a lot of people who are probably listening or watching this, it's you have to find that thing. For me, it was graphic design, and more specifically, typography. So at the end of the day, if you cut me, if you strip me of all that I have, I could still say I'm going to design with type better than a lot of people. And from there, I'm able to build disparate interests and things that have no relationship to typography, but that's just part of my spine and my identity. And then I'm able to tie these other ideas together. Over time, the spine grows really strong. It grows really broad. So there are many things that you can talk about. So now I talk a lot about pricing strategy, about negotiations, about communication, and just mindset stuff. But it was built on that one essential trunk.
Yeah, I love this because especially like producing content, like we obviously we since we started, we tried every single one, and just this show has been the one spine, I feel like, for us, not only to, you know, reach audiences, to share with people, connect. It has been amazing in so many levels, right? And it has become that spine, and it continues to evolve. But what we've seen also that happened to us was everybody wants to start very broad, right? So what is your advice to when they're like, that is the way, like the way is to start broad and then go to, what is your advice? How do people should start, like, how do they identify that spine?
Okay, there's a couple things. So this is the argument that we always get. Should I specialize or should I be a generalist? And I think the creative person doesn't like repetition, doesn't want to do the same thing. And that sounds really boring and like a death sentence for a lot of people. And we also think mistakenly, if we appeal to a lot of people by offering lots of different things, the market share for us is ginormous. It's scary to say, like, I'm going to do identity design for mixed martial artists. It's scary in North America, right? Because now it's like all of a sudden I have to give up a lot of these things. But when you start to focus your attention on something, you can increase the intensity of that focus. We know this, and there's a lot of examples. So what I would ask each person is come to the conclusion yourself is in your life, when you look around and you study, you really study, not just on a superficial level, the people that you admire who are successful, were they specialists first or generalists first? And then come to your own conclusion, because to be honest, I'm tired of having this argument with people. So if you think more people are successful, the people you look up to and admire, and you study their history, starting out as a generalist, then go do that and be successful, and God bless you. But for me, and I've searched long and hard to find clear examples of people who are total generalists who have become super successful. There's only a handful of them. So the majority of the evidence seems to indicate that if you specialize first, develop true skill and mastery over something, and then you can start to expand, those people tend to be more successful.
Incredible. We're just going to send them this clip. That's all. I mean, if they ask, we're just going to send them this. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to take advantage of this moment to actually, you know, tell people to go and check out your YouTube channel, because you have all these incredible resources.
Yeah.
Is the future without an E at the end, right? And I'm telling you, that is, you can binge watch that channel for hours, and you would learn so much. So thank you so much for putting all out there. And Chris, what I really enjoy about talking with you and listening to your videos and your podcast is that you don't really try to push a belief, if I'm going to put it that way, right? You try to empower people. Like you just said, you're like, you can believe what you want, but do your research. I love that you try to empower people to think by themselves, right? And a lot of people in the marketing space, right? You see it, they're just trying to push their own beliefs into other people sometimes. Is that, because I'm trying to phrase this question, uh, I feel like that is needed sometimes, and I'm not 100% sure to, try to get business, and that's how my people might see it sometimes. But I'm curious because you have a very, very unique kind of like principle on teaching and empowering other people. And I want to know more about it. And how do you compare it to what other marketers are doing in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think people have mixed agendas. So they'll create content because it builds awareness because they want to be famous or they want to sell product or there's some
Mm.
other agenda that's in there. And we're pretty smart. We've become quite attuned to picking up the signals because
Yeah.
when you start to watch one of these videos, you're like, okay, lots of talking, no value, promises. I know a sales pitch coming in 3, 2, and then there's the sales pitch. And
Yeah.
then it discredits the whole thing because you feel like, God, you were just selling to me the whole time. Why don't you just come up
Yeah.
straight up front and say, like, I'm going to sell you this idea, this product or this service, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now. So at least
Yeah.
we can be honest with each other. My thinking and my philosophy on this is that if I just help enough people, I will live richly in many different ways, not always in money, but I will have purpose. I'll have meaning to my life. I'll know that I can die tomorrow and I've had made some small dent in the universe. And that matters to me. I want my life to count for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to put in record. I love that answer, and I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here because
Okay.
you love it, and
Let's
I
do
would
it.
love challenging ideas. And so, for those that are operating from a place of need, the first 4 years, it was all need for us, right? So we went to places where it's like we don't really know this task or this strategy, but we're gonna sell it, right? Because we had a connection with that person, and then we will research, execute. There's some results, not 100%. We have been completely honest with them to the point that one of them came to us like, guys, I feel like you guys are using me as your guinea pig, right? And we're like, gut punch, right? But it came from a place of need because we needed to finance the operations of the freelancing operation that we had at the time. So to those, right, you just mentioned, I can live richly in many different ways. We now see it because now we are not in a place of need, thank God, knocking on wood, right? But for those that are in that place of need, that are struggling to get that traction, and it's like, man, they're publishing, they're executing, like they might not be sleeping, they might not be eating well. Like, what is your advice there?
Okay. I have a lot of advice there, but I'm just curious, like where the counterpunch or the argument is happening. I'm not sure I understand it clearly.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's like, okay, for those that are in the place of need, because I would have probably asked, okay, I just need to go out and sell, because if I don't sell, I will starve, basically. So when we say richly in many ways, richly like, hey, I know my purpose. I'm helping millions of people.
Right.
I'm happy with that, right? But I need money to eat, right? I need
Yes.
that money.
Okay. So there's a couple of things here. You need to sell. You need to be able to pay for the place that you live and the roof over your head, for food that you put onto the table, and survival is your first instinct, and you must do that. I'm not talking about that just yet, but let me ask you a couple of questions. One is, if you look at every person as a prospect, somebody to sell services to because you're so needy of money, how do you think they feel? What do you think the impression is when you create? So I find that people who try to sell, who try to close, who have a very clear agenda that they're not really trying to help me, I get it pushes me away. It makes me fearful. It makes me to lose trust in this person.
Yeah.
And if that's what happens, what you'll find out is the harder you try to sell, the fewer clients you get.
Wow.
So it's counterintuitive. Okay. Now, I want everybody who's listening to this, who's in a position where your survival depends on your ability to sell, I want you to rethink the word sell. I just want you to change that word. It's 4 letters. Let's just erase that word in your mind and just help. So transform sell to help. Like, I want to help you. And I genuinely and with full enthusiasm believe that where you have a challenge, I can actually provide service. So, but I want to understand what your needs are. I want to understand how you make decisions. I want to understand what has prevented you from having success up until this point. And if I can truly help you, I will. And sometimes helping you is to say, I'm not qualified for this.
Yes.
Sometimes being helpful is to refer someone else, or to say, like, you know what, this is you're going to overpay for this.
Yeah.
I will charge you this amount, but you're going to overpay me to do this. If you want, you should call somebody else for a lot less money.
Yeah.
What happens then is what you do is you build trust. And trust is really the currency that we're working with then, right? So you have to ask yourself this question. Everything you say, and more importantly, everything you do, either loses or gains trust in the other person's eyes.
Yeah. Wow.
So ask yourself, the next time you have a call with a client, how deep is the bucket of trust that you're building versus the bucket of losing trust? So when the client says something and you cut them off, when the client hasn't even fully, clearly articulated their problem, and you already say, I know the answer. Like, how is that possible? You could know the answer. I'm still working through it in my mind.
Yeah.
How do you know I even need this? So these are all assumptions that are really selfish and self-motivated versus trying to help the other person. The most wonderful thing happens if you help the other person, if you, in their eyes, are perceived as somebody who is worthy of being trusted, they will not only pay you more money, they'll stop talking to other people, and they'll give you more creative latitude than you've ever had in your life. So it's counterintuitive. And the reason why is I think is because in popular culture and media, we have too many bad examples of what it means to sell somebody something. We have the Wolf of Wall Street. We have con men, con women, con people who run around saying that's the alpha prototype is sell, high pressure, aggressive. And to me, it's an old way of selling. I think it works in some areas when the seller has a lot of leverage. But in most cases for creative people, it's really ineffective. Now, I'd love to hear from your audience, if they're tuning in live, to say, yeah, I use high pressure sales techniques and they work for me. Please, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, put them in the comments. We would love to hear it. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, when we changed that, when we changed that perspective, that's when everything clicked, right? Because it got to a point where it shifted. We're like, we're done. Like, this is not what it does. I used to work in the fitness industry, so a lot of those studios use that pressure for, we're trying to convince people that that's the solution that they need. Well, they don't even want it, right? Like they just went through this crazy workout and then they're dying, sweating, lower pressure, and then we're trying to sell $159 membership. No, so that, like, personally, that was my inflection point. Like, there has to be a better way, and that's when we started implementing those things. So I appreciate your input.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
We had a guest here called George Bryant that he said something that day that really resonated. He said, instead of competing for getting clients, right, compete on who can serve them the best. And I think that right there is what makes actually a good sale. Right, because like, hey, I'm coming here with the best intentions because I know for a fact that I can really help you, like you just said, right? Change that word sell from help, and I know what I do can add value to you. But I think whether that sale goes through or not, the people cannot attach themselves to that sale. I feel like when you're attached yourself to that sale, whether it happens or not, right? And if your mood or anything depends on that is when you start losing and you start letting those sales control you. And I wanted to point this out because you said, think of your actions as whether you're gaining or losing trust with people. And I love that because in one of the videos that I saw from you, you were talking about this binary decision, right? Talking about, is this going to add to my life or subtract from my life? Is it going to be positive or negative? And I'm very curious, do you see everything in life in those kind of like binary lenses, whether I gain or I lose?
That's a really, really good question. And the honest answer is no. I do not see things as binary. The reason why I say it in black and white terms is because people are confused and they're coming from the opposite point of view. They lack clarity and focus. So everything seems viable to them and they have no system to measure whether or not they should pursue option A, B, C, or D. And so all of them look good. And so for them, it's many shades of gray. so like at the beginning of the show, you said I help people by simplifying things. So what I have to do is I have to simplify it to a point in which it's going to hurt me or it's going to help me. They love me or they hate me. And then that way you can say, okay, it's definitely not love me. It must be hate me then. Because we're always confused as the stuff in the middle, right? And so if I help people to move things from category to category, and then now they can see clearly, they can make a decision. But life isn't really that simple, obviously, right? And I don't govern my life that way, but I'm much more clear in my mind as to what I want and who I am. So it's a lot easier for me to make those decisions. Now, when I was teaching at Art Center, I would always ask the student who's sitting in front of me, it's like, whose voice are you hearing in your head right now? Because I'm literally talking to you, you specifically, calling you by name and talking to you for 5 minutes. And when I'm done talking, you have this glazed over look. Where was your mind? And it's because a lot of people have noisy voices in their head. It's a parent, it's a teacher, it's a friend. It's all the critical inner voices that they're hearing that they can only filter in about 30% of what is being said. And that's why it's like we have to learn how to quiet those voices so we can be present in the moment and grounded in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the audience is agreeing with you. We have some comments coming in. Long-term relationship should be the goal. We have Trish saying, hey, totally agree. When you're pushing too much, it just pushes clients away. That's not how the law of attraction works. The more you let go and be untitled and consistent, then you will attract the right people. So I think we're right here on your court, including us, just saying. I just want to put it for the record there.
Chris, so you just mentioned about talking to someone and, gazing away, just reminded me of when I was younger, and my dad, he would literally sit us down after a bad game of soccer and he would give us this like 1 hour spiel, and then all of a sudden he would look at me and he says, repeat exactly what I just said. And I was like,
lost. Done.
Yeah, I was literally lost in my mind.
Chris, let me tell you, it still happens here at the office. We have conversations, then they're like, hey, Fonzie, what did you just say? And it's just PTSD. Okay.
I'm just dreaming, dreaming of the possibilities, everything, all the people that we can help with this content.
Yeah.
That's why. And Chris, I wanted to ask you as well. I love this. I love the internal side of things, but I'm very curious in your company, right? Because it seems like literally your marketing plan seems to be, how can I help people? What is the content, the piece of content I can create right now that is going to help the most amount of people? And a lot of marketing departments will be, that is crazy, right? Like, what is the big promise that we're delivering? What is the hook that we're going to use? What are our conversion rates and all this stuff? I'm curious, how does the marketing works on the future and what you're doing?
I think you might have a camera in our company or something, because that pretty much is what we do. So we have a couple different managers, right? And my main goal is to obsess over how we can help the communities that we serve. And I don't guess at it. I literally ask them on Twitter and on social media. It's like, what kind of content do you enjoy the most from us? What kind of content are you seeing that you think we need to do more of? Or how can I help you? What are your challenges and roadblocks? I want to know. And then I have them vote on it. And then I go back to my team. Well, they said they want this. Let's start working on how we can deliver this piece of content. Wow. And then I'll go into my research cave. I'll read a book. I'll read an article. I'll watch videos just to make sure I'm not talking on my butt. It's like, I have an idea, but I want it to have an informed opinion. Yeah. And then we share that. Now, it's been to our detriment. I have to be honest with you, because Ben, who runs the revenue for our company, is like, Chris, we're not making any money on this. I think you're aware of that, right? And I tell him, Ben, your job is to find a way to make money on it, not mine. Yeah. My job is to teach people to help them.
Yeah.
And so we have to do some recalibration there for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. And an incredible lesson there too, right? Like we often say, hey, find the who, right? Like for you, this seems like this is your passion. Like, it's all over the place. You're the guy that's in front of the camera, right? And then you found that who that is like, your job is to figure out how to make that happen. And, for the longest time, we were freelancers playing. And as we started the businesses, right, like we need to wear some different hats here and there, right? But this is so important, because the second we found that who that started to implement on the service side of things, on the product, they elevated that so much more. And then it gave us room to do this 3 times a week, which we absolutely love. So I just don't want that lesson to like being overseen either. And thank you for the insight on the company. Now, we just might copy it. So,
yeah, that's the new framework for our marketing plan over here now.
Earlier today, we tuned into a couple videos. One, and I have them right there on my notes. the belief video, or be live video, however you want to
Mhm.
pronounce it, which was incredible. There's a framework there. I don't know if we could dive in a little bit into it, because
Sure.
the belief that people have on their personal life, on their business. And last night specifically, I went to a place where I haven't been in there. You know, the holidays, there's family in town. I don't feel the momentum at work. Like it was just like when I came to the office Monday, it was like, silence. I can get stuff done now, right? And the stress was built up, and I didn't let it out. And I think that was the perfect video for me this morning to actually watch and consume, because there's certain things that we can do every single day to make sure that, you know, we're continuing to in the right direction. Is there a specific point where, like, how how do we frame, how do we train our brain on the words that we say that are so powerful, so we can start creating that momentum and that future that we want to create?
Okay, this is a loaded question here. Okay, so you're pointing to a video that I think I spoke for about 35 minutes. I'm gonna try to condense down some ideas,
Yeah,
and then maybe we go a little deeper with you. Okay.
yeah.
So here's the thing. I forget who said this, but they said this is one of like the great philosophers, is to observe without judgment is one of the highest forms of intelligence. And there's a difference between observation and perception. Okay, so when I observe something, I'm seeing it for what it is. I'm not telling myself some kind of story, but once it gets filtered through my lens, through my eyes and experience,
Mm.
I all of a sudden attach meaning to it. So, for example, if somebody were to cut you off on the freeway, you might tell yourself a story because we want to have meaning because it feels very unstable and chaotic in our world. If
Yeah.
something happens, we don't understand why. So we make up all kinds of stories, and most of those stories don't actually help us. So the story that we tell ourselves is, you know what? That person's a jerk. They're so inconsiderate. They didn't see me. Actually, they're doing this to spite me because they think I'm not a person worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
And that's one story. A different story could be this person is stressed out. They're about to lose their job, and their kid got sick this morning, and they're a single parent, and they had to take care of them before they went to work, and so they're late. That's a different story.
Yeah.
But the observation is a car just moved in front of me. So
Absolutely.
all these stories that we tell ourselves, unfortunately, because of our conditioning, our upbringing, who our parents are, the kinds of stories they told us to try to protect us from the world, started to make us fearful of other people. Think about that expression, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, because strangers are going to take something from you. So now we already have a built-in uh, a prejudice against people to say that they're going to take from us, that
Yeah.
they're up to no good. And that didn't come from anything. So that's why we have fear of people who don't look like us, who don't sound like us, because we were told not to trust those kinds of people.
Yeah.
And so this is creating division and animosity between people that shouldn't even have that. So the belief, the word lie is in the word belief.
Mm.
It's just like, I think we just need to learn to be better, neutral and objective observers of what happens, to work on that first.
Yeah.
And from that, then you can tell yourself whatever kind of story that you want, but to be able to see things clearly for what they are versus what
Yeah.
you want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of like backtrack a little bit to something you said at the beginning. That is, when you started doing content, you had to push a lot of your fears away. We found this year, which probably has been the year that I've defeated, if you want to put it in that way, the most limiting, the most amount of limiting beliefs that I've had is because of something happens when you put your thoughts into words. And I think that that can work to reshape the stories that now you're telling yourself. Because it happened many times where I say something and then I'm like, whoa, did I really believe that? Right. And then it kind of like takes me into this process of self-analysis, and I'm like, oh no, wow. And then it starts leading to, okay, how do I change this belief? Does that did that happen to you? Does that still happen to you in a way?
It happens to me all the time. And there's a reason why it happens to us, because in the back of our brain, somewhere in that gray and that white matter, are all our ideas. And it's very malleable. It takes many different forms. It's kind of like dreaming. You know how sometimes you're dreaming, you're in a car, and the next thing you're on the beach, and then you're eating a hot dog. None of it makes any sense. And that's kind of how your brain works. It's going from idea to idea to idea. until you articulate that idea, whether you say it out loud, whether you write it or record it on a video or record a podcast, you really are not committed to that idea at all. That's why David C. Baker talks about this in his book, The Business of Expertise. He says you gain clarity through articulation. So when you say something, you then become aware of what it is that you actually think. This is where it's helpful to have dialogue with people. And one of the best ways to do this is through school or teaching. So when you try to teach something, inevitably somebody's going to raise their hands like, so why did you make that decision to use red? Or why did you guys decide to wear matching purple shirts today? And then you have to explain to yourself, like, what? It was purely coincidental, or we only have purple shirts, so no matter what shirt we pick, it's always going to be the same.
That's fun.
Or we like this duality. You know, we like that we're both named Luis and we're both going to do this and we're both wearing our hats backwards and that's our thing, right? Like we're twins, but not, right? And so there's a decision there. So what we want to do is we want to get into this habit of putting ourselves in a position where we are forced to articulate our ideas. Because the first time you ask that question is really the first time I make a commitment to it. And then I have to ask myself, why do I believe that? And is this true? And what evidence do I have that this is true? Now, one thing that I do quite often is I try to debate myself. If I have an idea, like if I'm wounded because somebody said something, if I feel hurt or feel jealous or whatever emotion I'm going through, I have to ask myself, is this a valid response based on the objective information that's presented before us? Is this going to help me, us, you? And then I start to debate in my head and I said, you know what? That's silly. That's a silly idea. And this is not definitely going to help me. So I'm going to make a decision now. And the next time I'm in a situation like this and I have this feeling, I'm going to say to myself, let it go. Just let it go.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was about to ask you about if you have a framework, you know, when those ideas come in and how to get out of that rut. Because when we first started, and I think like the first time that we heard this was initially from our mother, right? She's very wise and she's like, guys, like identify the situation, right? If you don't like it, identify that feeling and then let it go. That helped us big time. You know, that she told me that when I was 16 years ago, right? Like, and it has helped us. But I've noticed that with the people and the environments that we're in, sometimes that's not the right thing that we see the regular thing, right? The normal thing to do. You know, we're kind of like the oddball that practice that. So I'm assuming that might be the majority of the environments. So how do you develop that habit? How you are constantly identifying those ideas? Is it natural to you now? And for those starting, right? Like you mentioned, you know, put yourself in a position to articulate these ideas, right? For us, publishing has done that. Is there something different that you've done other than publishing that kind of helps you in your day-to-day with those kind of decisions?
Yeah, I do have a lot of practice, and this does come naturally to me. And I do want to say that for people who don't think like this, don't think you're weird or anything, maybe I'm the weirdo. But I do remember, I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. And part of being in Asian culture is you receive these little red envelope of money during Lunar New Year. Okay. And Asians know this. Okay. Most Asians. And I remember back then I have no money. We're relatively living modest lives. And I was like, oh, this is great. I have an envelope with the $20 bill. This is super awesome.
Yeah.
Something happened during that day and I lost the money. And I remember kind of beating myself up over it, like, you're so stupid. Like, how could you be so careless? I thought about all the things I could have bought, like comic books and toys and action figures, whatever. But then I asked myself, is this feeling something ever going to bring the money back? And I'm having this internal dialogue as a 9-year-old. And I was thinking, of course, it's not going to bring the money back. So what do we want to do about this? What we need to do is develop habit to make sure the things that we care about are placed in a consistent place and not just left around. So to this day, I'm very habitual with where I put my keys, where I put my phone. So I almost always know where things are.
Exactly.
And so that's a habit. So do I want to live in regret? It's not going to bring the money back. Do I want to keep beating myself up over this? That's only going to make the pain feel worse. What I need to do is to learn. That expression in life, you either win or you learn, right? It's binary, sorry, right? So I didn't win, obviously. My only other option is figure out how can I learn from the situation. So that's part of the framework, right? We need to start to examine our thinking a little bit more, to divorce ourselves, like we are not our thoughts and we can control what we think. We have control over this, right? And then we have to examine, like, where's this idea coming from?
Yeah.
Who put this idea in my head, and trace it back to its origin and say, well, that was an irrational fear I had when I was 6 years old, when a dog barked at me and I was scared to death that the dog was going to bite me. And now I'm afraid of dogs. Well, what happens now? Am I still afraid of dogs? And so we can examine that. So we can just have this examination, this internal reflection or meditation, as some people might put it.
Yeah.
And then we can understand, is this good for me? How can I learn from this? And if you use that, you'll start to clear up your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing. I can tell you definitely have
golden boulder. Hold on.
Yeah.
No, that's not it. This one. Bam. Okay.
There we go. That's like a golden nugget. Oh, way bigger. So, Chris, I can tell you definitely take responsibility of your life, right? And that's a trait that we have seen, obviously, on pretty much every successful people. They have this inner locus of control where they look inwards when they have a problem, right? On how do I learn about this? Like you said, I love that. Either I win or I learn. And I think a lot of people, they need that moment where their awareness opens up and they can see that they're in control of everything. And I personally think this little segment that you just did right here can be that moment where it opens their awareness to say, wow, everything is in my control and I can do everything in my power to move forward. And what you just mentioned reminds me also the saying of Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning. He says, he has a tattoo actually that says, can't change it. And he says he allows himself to feel those feelings for like 5 minutes, right? Whether that is rage, sadness, whatever it is, anger. And then after that, he's like, can't change it. Now, what can I do, right? What can I do to move forward? So thank you so much for that framework. I really hope, I know I'm going to start using it and try to put my own framework together with what you just shared with us.
Chris, I'm just going to...
Can I add something before you ask another question? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to clarify. You're not in control of everything. You're not. You're only in control of the things that you can control. So there's a serenity prayer. It goes something like this: to have God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't change, to have the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, there are things that are going to happen to you. If you work for somebody and you get laid off, you can't control that.
Yeah.
You can control how you react, how you respond. So let's examine that for a second. So somebody lets you go, and it's tough times right now, right? If you work in an industry that's in collapsing and in decline, you're going to get let go. It's what's going to happen because they can't afford you anymore. You can go home and you can say, how do I want to respond or react to this? Your reaction might be, this sucks, it's so unfair, they're disloyal, I've given them the best of me, nobody will ever hire me again, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have enough skills. And then you could sit there and like a pig, you can wallow in that mud.
Yeah.
It could drag you down. Because I think human nature also loves that negative feeling. It makes us feel alive in a very dark way. Or you could say, you know what? It's time I moved on. They were loyal to me for as long as I could, and they're going through their own challenges. And this is an industry that hasn't learned to adapt. Putting 2 more years into this is only going to make me 2 years less viable in the marketplace. This was an opportunity in disguise. I have to work at finding the opportunity. Well, you know, there was that other business I always wanted to launch, never got to. There were those 10 books that I promised myself I should have read 5 years ago and I haven't read. There's relationships I need to repair. I've neglected them because of work.
Yeah,
I got to rekindle that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. If you can control how you react to things or how you respond, that's where the power is.
Love it. I want to actually tie content to what you just said, because a lot of the times people, you know, they see the metrics. I didn't get that many views, and immediately they quit. You don't control, right? What we're talking right now, you don't control whether other people see it or not. But what you have in your control is, am I going to show up consistently? Am I going to publish it in these platforms where people usually come and they might see it, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that, because I think that plays a huge role in content creation, specifically at the very beginning when you might not see that much traction in your stats, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, there's a story. We were in this mastermind group together a few months ago when COVID happened, and this lady, she used to work in the cruise industry, right? And she was there. I saw her for a couple of weeks, and you know, she was just quiet. She was not participating much. And one day, they ask her, it's like, hey, why are you here? Like, what happened that you're here? Like, we never seen you. Like, you never show that entrepreneurial spirit before, right? Like, you were employed. And she's like, look, my industry is closed right now. They let me go. I had to move in with my parents, and then I realized one day I woke up and my parents is like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, kind of like bashing her for because she got let go because of this crazy situation that's happening in the world. And she turned around, she's like, hey guys, stop. I appreciate your thoughts, but as of today, I'm self-employed, right? And just a change in perspective there, where it's like, I'm actually gonna go and find and learn, and I'm starting to implement. To me, that caused a great impression that day. And it kind of ties on to what you just shared. It's like, okay, how can we change that perspective and move forward wherever we are? And it's crazy. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, the time just flew by. I thought we were just talking for like 30 minutes. And there's definitely more stuff like, how do you charge more? I mean, that's crazy. A lot of people, I know that's one of the things that you do with the creatives. And there's a video with the snake oil video was incredible. By the way, people have to go do that, because talking about haters and publishing and you putting yourself out there, being yourself, there might be some people that would think that would love you or hate you. So I'm just gonna throw this out there. We might have to have you back for a second show. But before we go, there's two quick questions, right? And one is for somebody that's kind of like starting up on the publishing journey or their business. That's normally the people that we've been connecting with. What is your number one advice? And this might be, let's keep it as simple as possible, because I know that we could potentially, spend another hour just talking about this. But it's
that's a big question.
that is a big question. But somebody, let's get super specific. Somebody that's publishing, the only way to publishing is kind of what we call the minimum viable content, which is your Facebook Live, something without friction, 5 minutes a day, right? And they're trying to sell a service to a group of people, right? What will be something that they can start doing to get that momentum continuously? And I feel that if they implement everything that we talked about, they can. But what is like your golden nugget, right? Or golden boulder?
For them to get into the content game?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to recommend to most people, first, before you do anything, have an informed opinion. Because there are too many people who are throwing around uninformed opinions. I just don't need another one to contribute to misinformation. It's one thing to say, like, I know what the options are and I choose to speak about this, but it's another thing to be ignorant of what the other options are and say, this is the truth. Well, that's a truth. That's your truth, but it's not necessarily the truth. And we need to read. We need to organize our thinking. So I would say a couple of things. There's an exercise in the book, The Business of Expertise, where David Baker talks about drop and give me 20. Okay, so that's the military exercise to say, like, if you're in good physical condition, you should be able to drop and give me 20 push-ups right now. Drop and give me or 20 pull-ups, whatever it is. So you have to be ready. So for people, sit down and think, what are the 20 things in my life that I know that could be valuable to somebody to the point in which they would pay me to know those things? And really sit down and work on this and write. And your first time articulating an idea should not be on camera. Really just sit down and build structure, build an outline to what it is that you want to say, find supporting information, go research, find some quotes, and then now you've got some meat on the bones.
Absolutely.
Then put that content out there so that you can sound like a more informed person. And you could do this on any platform. So I recommend finding the space and the place that is the least friction for you to create content on a regular basis. If we remove the excuses, if we remove the pain of creating content, then we're more likely to do it. So for me, it could be on Twitter, it could be on Reddit, it could be on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Just write something and throw an image in there. And then over time, you're going to see a pattern of what people really respond to. So there's a basic formula. I'm going to tell it to you right now. Okay. Tell a personal story that elicits an emotional reaction with one clear takeaway. If you can hit these three things, this is the golden formula. Why does it need to be a personal story? Well, if this is a story that you read, then we feel like other people have already shared that. I get that. So it should be a personal story. Like, how did this impact you? How did you experience this story? Next, stories that get people to feel something are more likely to be shared and talked about. So it could be something of despair, of courage, of fear, of love, of honor, duty. Get me to feel something. I'm going to share it. I'm going to connect with you. And last is you could tell 1,000 stories, but if there's not this, you're missing a point. Make sure you know what the point is.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets complicated. People tell stories and then they have no point. So how do you solve that? Start with a point. Write one sentence. What the one thing I want you to know from this is this.
Yeah.
And then when you tell the story, edit the story so all the extra details that don't add up to the point are taken away. Then you're going to have a really tightly knit story that's going to deliver a lot of value to people, that's going to connect with them on an emotional level. And that's how you start to do this. And you're going to start to see results almost immediately.
Incredible.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Masterclass in just like this last 2 minutes.
Sorry, this is going to take 10 seconds, but my selfish question that I wanted to ask, I'm not going to ask because it's going to take some time, but it was along those lines. I wanted to know, because your presentations are amazing and they're backed up with so many incredible quotes, and I can tell you read a lot and you put all your knowledge in there. So my question was going to be, if you have, the full question is not this, but do you have any resource where you walk people through your research process, how you put all these things together? Because I would love to be one of those students right there.
I do not. Maybe that's a class for 2021. But I will say this is Jim Rohn quote, success leaves clues. And if you just start to look at the things I've made on the different platforms, from Instagram to YouTube to LinkedIn to Twitter, you're going to get a pretty good blueprint as to how I do what I do. And literally just look at it chronologically and jump from platform to platform, align the dates within a week, and you'll see like how my content strategy works. And I'm not hiding anything. It's all in public display. And so you'll start to be able to reverse engineer what it is that I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I will definitely be doing that. I'm going to put my Sherlock Holmes glasses.
Fancy, yeah. Chris, last question. Where will you be if you did not publish?
Where would I be if I did not publish? I would probably be miserable working for the man, making commercials for a living, and in a market that's in decline, competing on lower budget jobs that are not creative, and fighting tooth and nail just to get that work.
Yeah. Wow. So thank you. People, go publish, please. Go publish. Start. Chris, it has been an incredible honor having you on the show. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? We've said it once or twice. We're going to leave all the links right in the description. All you got to do is scroll down and click there. Where's the best way to connect with you?
You can find me on most social platforms at the Chris Do, and Do is spelled D-O. But the channel where we create all our content is called The Future, and there's no E in The Future. Just remember, The Future doesn't have an ego. Just drop the E. The ego is gone. All right. So Future, and you'll find everything that we do.
Love
Incredible.
It. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being the last live guest of 2020, Chris. I appreciate you. Any last thoughts that you want to share that we might have missed?
No, nothing but to wish you all a happy holidays and to have a fruitful, productive, and a goal-busting 2021.
Let's go. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and subscribe, smash that subscribe button, and follow us on social media at BizRosCo.
That is right. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you did, because Chris was legendary, don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.